This is the PressBox High School Football Show with Booker Corrigan and legendary former McDonough coach Dom Damico. The guys look over everything going on in the world of high school football, both at the private school and public school level. Now, here's Booker Corrigan.
Hey now, coming to you from the live Casino Hotel studio, thanks to Wise Markets, Glen Burnie Transmissions, and the U.S. Army, and of course, the Baltimore Running Festival coming up October 19th. Dom, we get you signed up for that Belcar Health 5K.
I'm ready to go.
You are ready to go. You are totally ready to go. You look like you've been working out all week, Ace.
Been burned two motors off of treadmills already last week, so I've been putting some time in.
Somehow, I doubt it. If we were playing a game show, I'd hit my buzzer. I'm doubting you. I'm doubting you.
Chuck Berry would gong me.
Chuck Barris, he was the best.
He was.
I love Gene the dancing machine.
I love it.
Not the hoagie dancing machine. That's a story for another time, people. Story for another time.
Yes, sir.
Glad to have Coach Damico. And, Coach, we talked a lot about in the prep about we're going to cover games that we previewed last week. We're going to recap some games that happened. Then we're going to, talk about the schedule coming up. There's some really big ones. And then we're going to get into, the Calvert Hall, Mount St. Joe aspect and the crowd there. I think we really need to do that. We're going to continue after the break. We're going to continue our recruiting conversation. But the first question I want to get to you, and I think this is valuable for people, if you're a parent or if you're a coach or if you're a teacher, there's times when you have to stick your neck out. There's times when you have to feel like you're being an innovator. And I watched you coach. And I coached in the program. I coached middle school. I don't run around town saying I'm a football coach, right?
True.
I enjoyed doing it, and the kids had a great time, a great experience, and no one got hurt. So, that was my extent of coaching middle school football with you. But I went to watch your teams play. You had a knack for being an innovator. In what ways do you felt like you stuck your neck out and really took a risk on helping a young high school kid become the best version of themselves and bring a football team to where they can be the best version of themselves?
Yeah, well, it actually really started in Philadelphia when I got the head football job at Cardinal Doherty. I was 23 years old, and I knew I had to do something different at the school. They were losing for a while, trying to get them back into the playoffs. So, again, now that's 30 years ago, and so I jumped on the run and shoot bandwagon. And back then, throwing the ball more than running the ball was a novelty. The other novelty was no huddle offense. Everyone huddled 30 years ago. There was a school that was no huddle run and shoot, and it was University of Maryland, actually. Mark Duffner was the head coach. Fortunately, I had access to what they did in their process, preparation, and practice and meetings. My receiver coach at Temple, his name was Clyde Christensen. He was the receiver coach for Mark Duffner. And I got access to those meetings, how to install no-huddle run-and-shoot football at an early age. That really, really helped me. And, those meetings were private. I was the only high school coach in the meetings that was given access to what Mouse Davis was teaching. So, 30 years ago, I went no huddle, throw the ball every down. It worked in Philly. It helped me get the McDonough job. I continue that with Bobby Sablehouse and all the Division I players at McDonough. And, I was really known for someone that was at the high school level, threw the ball more than they ran the ball, went no huddle, and had an up-paced tempo before its time.
And one of the lessons I'm taking out of that, and to reinforce it for our listeners and viewers, and thank you for being a part of the show, is if you want to innovate, if you want to help guide those youngsters to a new level, you got to prepare. You have to get some access to knowledge, whether it's parenting, teaching, or in this instance, in coaching.
Yeah, knowledge is power, and without that, there's no power. Really, this it really depends on the school you're at. Like if you watch Wisconsin play Michigan, and that's old school football. Big, giant, strong linemen running the ball down your throat is what football used to be like 30, 40 years ago. Wisconsin's still doing it. Most of the defenses today are geared around stopping speed, spread football. And now all of a sudden you got to prepare for Wisconsin, who's trying to jam the ball down your throat and is very difficult to stop. Most defenses aren't prepared to stop that.
And when Wisconsin had Russell Wilson, they did a little bit of spread out more. There was a little bit more razzle down, a little bit more backyard ball.
They did, yeah.
He has
Russell
that athleticism to do it.
Yeah, he can. He extended plays. He kind of added a different dimension to the offense. Today, it's smash mouth football at Wisconsin, and it works for them. Some schools need to spread it out. Washington State with Mike Leach, and everywhere Mike Leach has ever been is they're throwing the ball, and he's a funny character, really an interesting guy.
Yeah, and when you say interesting, you mean peculiar?
Very peculiar,
in a good way.
In a good way.
Now let's get into teams in this area, players in this area who are impressing you at this point in the season.
Well, Spalding still, I always keep going back to Spalding. Spalding's coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, if you're a defensive coordinator and you got to come up with a plan to stop Spalding, you're going to have to be on an A game because they really spread the field. Kyle Schmidt's very, all over the place. You have to defend sideline on the sideline. His running game is strong. His RPOs are strong. He has a collegiate offense at the high school level. So I think watching Spalding play is a fun offensive deal, and what Kyle does is really good.
You like Spalding, Calvert Hall, Mount St. Joe, Thriller, and let's talk numbers.
Yeah, an amazing crowd at Calvert Hall. They said there was over 5,000 people at the game, so I'm sure Coach Eckrell sold a lot of pit beef sandwiches down there in Towson.
Yeah, I noticed you threw the dart at him. How many pit beef sandwiches did you have?
I was only in the line once, but I got multiple sandwiches.
Why go in line twice when you can just order two?
Very true.
Order three. We love it. Now, who else, what other teams and programs are impressing to date?
Well, I got to tell you, Franklin obviously had a big game. It was my first taste of a rivalry, a public school rivalry, county school rivalry, and it was actually really exciting. I would think there was over 1,000 people at the game, well attended, loud. Franklin just, mill for mill ran into the best version of Franklin possible. Our defense played extremely fast. They responded well to the pressure. Our offense moved the football. We had big plays all over the field. Our quarterback Vernon was throwing the ball to Corey Crawford, making big plays. John Smith, the running back in the game on the first series, had a 20-yard run, one of the best high school runs I've ever seen, and it really kind of set the
Barry
pace.
Sanders?
Just more of a powerful runner. Herschel Walker-like. Loved Herschel Walker from Georgia. So, yeah, John Smith kind of had a Herschel Walker-type run in that game to set the pace.
We were talking old, great college running backs the other day, and Earl Campbell, holy Moses.
Well,
good golly.
Yeah, don't get much better, much tougher than Earl Campbell.
Ooh, tough yards.
Oh.
And then you look at pro running backs, and I just have, and pardon the pun, but I have a sweet spot for Walter Payton. I mean, he enjoyed and initiated contact with dudes who were 40 pounds heavier.
He did. He actually gave out the punishment. He loved giving out the punishment.
To guys who were bigger.
He did.
He didn't shy away.
No doubt. And he was one of the first guys that had that mentality. He had the wiggle, he had the speed, he could run in between the tackles, and he wasn't going to get cornered. And if there was a collision that's going to happen, he's going to make the collision happen.
If he got cornered, he had no problem lowering his shoulder, lowering his head. And it's interesting because he played at the same time as Franco Harris, and Franco took some heat for stepping out of bounds.
He did.
But I don't know if Franco worries too much about that heat because I think he has rings on four fingers.
He has a lot of them.
So, go ahead. He can go be you, Franco. That's not a problem. Yeah. And, you have your style.
And Pittsburgh had a great team at that time, great coaches and a whole, just a roster full of guys that are in Canton. One thing about Walter, besides just the way he ran the football, he was just a class act after the game.
Oh, yeah.
Never had any issues with Walter off the field. He was just a consummate pro.
You got to love that. Let's get back to the high school stuff. We are brought to you by the Live Casino Hotel Studio and, of course, Wise Markets, Glen Birdie Transmission, U.S. Army, and the Baltimore Running Festival. Dom Damico, that Belcar Health 5K, breathing down your neck, October 19th, buddy.
I'm ready, brother.
Flat course. We flattened it for you.
I'm good on the downhill.
The escalator works on the hills going up. We're good there. Let's get into some of the games that we want to recap before the break.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. St. Francis, another big win for them.
Yeah. St. Francis kind of took it out a little bit on St. Joe Montvale, and St. Joe Montvale's, again, a national level team, 28-0 for St. Francis. This is their fourth shutout, and they're playing some really good teams. So that's a really impressive defense by St. Francis. On the offensive side, John Griffith, the quarterback, had a big game. He threw for a touchdown. He ran for a touchdown. He's just a sophomore.
John Griffith.
Yeah.
Love it.
Good player. He's going to be a great player. He's actually just a young guy right now, but he's getting better every year. Blake Corum, the running back that's committed to Michigan, they had another big day, and St. Joe Montvale just couldn't handle Blake. So 28-0 for St. Francis, another big win for Coach Poggi as they get geared up to play IMG in 2 weeks.
And Coach Poggi's he's putting his best foot forward. Obviously they dropped a tough one to Mater Dei, and that's life in the big city. I know that they went all the way over there to go play the game. So my hat's off to him, and I kind of respect that he set out to accomplish something, and he kind of I would check the box and say, you know what? Let's see what the next challenge is, because he's done really good work at St. Francis. Agreed?
Yeah, no doubt, 100%. And he'll have his chance again at the big shot with IMG coming in town, and everyone's going to be looking forward to that game on a national level.
And Coach Poggi has found a way to change kids' lives for the better. What more do you want?
Absolutely, and you have no problem if you're using football to change kids' lives. That's fine with me.
It is, and it can be. And when we come back from the break, we are going to talk about that recruiting conversation, because I think, we left it off with, starting to look at schools and stuff. And I really want to encourage you, if you didn't hear the first part of those conversations, there's nothing wrong with going back into the archives and re-listening to some of it, because it's valuable insight. You were so involved in it as a coach, but as a parent who's been through it a little bit, and as teachers kids are getting advice from all over the place, and it's always nice for people to gather as much information as they can. But we are going to take a quick break momentarily. We will be right back.
Need groceries today but don't have time to shop? Order online with same-day pickup or delivery at Wise Markets. Wise to go online. Now that's convenient.
This is Stan the Fan for Glen Burnie Transmissions, located right in the heart of Glen Burnie for almost 60 years. If you suspect you're having a transmission problem, GBT can save you hundreds of dollars over taking it to the dealers for a repair. Make an appointment for a free diagnostic and estimate. Call GBT at 855-728-1841. Their mission is simple: to provide excellent service at a reasonable price. Go to their website at gbt-online.com to check out all of the 5-star reviews. Let my friend Mark Schwartzman and his GBT team take the troubles out of transmission troubles. Call them today at 855-728-1841.
Respect. It's more than a word. In the U.S. Army, it is one of our core values, earned through selfless service to our nation and making a difference both at home and abroad. On the Army team, respect is earned daily. And now, in addition to earning respect, you may earn up to $40,000 in bonuses if you qualify. To learn more, visit goarmy.com/bonus or call 1-800-USA-ARMY. Paid for by the U.S. Army.
Welcome back. This is the PressBox High School Football Show. Booker Corrigan and Dom Damico in the live casino hotel studio. Thank you so much to Wise Markets, Glen Burnie Transmission, the U.S. Army, and the Baltimore Running Festival, the Bell Car Health 5K. Coach Damico, if you beat him, you will get a small medal, a crab-shaped medal.
Wow.
And if you lose to him, you get one too.
Well, I'd also like to let you. Let you know. Booker's a little bit under the weather today.
Yeah.
But, however, if you followed the Philadelphia Flyers in the '70s, you're a tough person. Half the Flyers, when me and Booker used to watch the Flyers in the '70s, half of their team couldn't skate. They were basically
golf shoes.
They were goons. They dumped the puck in, they beat the crap out of the guy, and then they put one line in to score all the goals, and that's kind of how they won. And that toughness rubbed off on Philadelphia people. I've always respected people that watched 70s Flyers hockey. I think there's a different mentality to those people.
Bobby Clark always with the blood on his jersey. Half the games he played with blood, and it was before the rules, so they didn't care.
No teeth, blood all over the place, no helmets. There was goalies with no mask on. Gump Worsley,
Rogie Vachon. Don't get Dom started on old hockey.
Yeah, we got to stick to football, but there's definitely a football mentality to the Broad Street Bullies. Yeah, that's why they won a couple of cups, to be honest.
The Broad Street Bullies. That we might call that Wisconsin. We might call them St. Francis. If they beat IMG, we might dub them the Broad Street Bullies.
I'll take that. That'd be a compliment to St.
Although
Francis.
we are very anti-bullying. But in those days, it was just a name for a hockey organization. Let's get back into the one game you wanted to revisit, because we talked about the pit beef.
Yeah.
We did hit the pit beef at Calvert Hall and Mount St. Joe, which I know you devoured. Let's talk about that game, because there were some players who stepped up.
There was
huge.
3 kids on offense for St. Joe. Marlo Wax, Billy Atkins, the quarterback, and Dante Thornton were just, really special on offense for St. Joe and Coach Holzer's offense. The defense for St. Joe, led by Tyler Levy and Steven Schultz, really kind of held Calvert Hall out of the end zone. Now, Calvert Hall had a lot of opportunities, and, even Donald Davis admitted that, they were real close to, scoring a lot more points, but St. Joe's defense kind of hung on there and did a great job. And Sean Tucker, the Syracuse commit for Calvert Hall, St. Joe did a great job, only holding Calvert Hall to 10 points. So great crowd, great football, really good players, and really a fun atmosphere in Towson for high school football.
And who are those 3 players from Mount St. Joe that you loved?
Marlo Wax, Billy Atkins, and Dante Thornton on offense.
You gotta love that. You gotta love the kids that do so well that Coach Damico is actually gravitating towards you. Now, we talked about recruiting, and it's a recurring conversation. Now, let's get into where you've decided you want to play football. You decide you're going to start looking at schools, and it's either going to be a private school or a public school. You can do. We talked about how in some counties you can go. They have open enrollment, or you can transfer to a place just because you want to go to that school, or they have a special program that you want to be a part of. I know Hereford's very big on that. Now let's talk about how you go about communicating with those different schools.
Yeah, well, I think it's a complicated situation, but I think today we can kind of get us through 7th and 8th grade, and then kind of over the next few shows we can get into the high school level recruiting. But I think once you get into the 8th grade, I think you have to differentiate: is the school that's recruiting you, are they offering you an admission slot plus financial aid or money? Who's paying for this? So being recruited is one thing. Are they guaranteeing you that they're going to get you admitted to the school? Now, the more selective schools that have less spots, like McDonough, Gilman, St. Paul's, Boys Latin, it's much more difficult to get that slot. That slot is coveted. And then once you get the slot, no matter wherever school you're going to go to, Spalding, Calvert Hall, St. Joe, someone has to pay for that slot. It's not free. All these schools are tuition based.
$20,000 plus.
So now that has to come into the picture. Where are these schools getting the money to pay? And obviously, if one school can have 30 scholarships and it's all full paid, they're going to be a good football
It's
team.
an easy way to build a team. A lot of times, and we had it a little bit in the lacrosse standpoint, but a lot of times you have families that are willing to suck up 75% of it and pay it, and then they want the school to kind of give them a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
But in other sports, you have kids who really do need, and there's a financial aid component where you're going to get a ton of aid if you qualify. How's that operate?
Yeah, it's supposed to be need-based in the MIAA. There's rules against just straight-out merit money. There's a couple schools that have some grandfathered merit money, and you know what? If they're following those rules, I don't know. I'm not an athletic director, or I'm not a headmaster, so I'm not really privy to those meetings. As a coach, you present kids to admissions people, to athletic directors, to heads of schools, heads of upper schools, and they decide whether that kid is admittable. And then once the kid gets the admission spot, it needs to be paid for. So you either have to have people behind the scenes writing checks, you got to use your endowment money, you got to find a way to get that paid for.
What's a great way for a parent who's listening to the show to engage that conversation with the coach or the head of school or the head of the upper school and say, here's what we're looking at from your tuition? Not many people. Like, I just sent a kid, I have a son who's a goucher. Nobody pays sticker price so much for college and for high school. But how do you engage that conversation of, here's what it says it costs to go to your school. What's the actual cost? Is it more? Some of these schools, it says it's 28. It ends up being 32. Sure. I get that. How do you engage that conversation? What's a good trick of the trade to get that started? Because that's vital.
Well, I think if the schools want you, the need can be adjusted. They're not supposed to, but I think there's a little bit of wiggle room based on what the school wants and how many buckets you hit in their process. So, it's not just a fixed number where everyone's, kind of on the same exact level. It's adjustable, and sometimes it's not fair. There are schools out there that have more money and more allocated towards scholarships and want to be good in certain sports, and it's not just football. You look around, you see there's high school programs that are really good in wrestling or lacrosse or football, and usually if you connect the dots, it usually goes back to funding financial aid. You can call it scholarship, you can call it recruiting, but how do you fund those financial aid kids that are going to come to your school, play lacrosse, wrestle, play football for you, usually
play soccer,
whatever
every
it is.
Sport.
But
literally every sport.
Private schools are really expensive. You start bringing 10 kids into McDonough or Gilman or Boys Latin, and you multiply that by the tuition, it gets expensive really quick.
And I can also tell you, because my ex-wife, Jen Little, was working in the alumni and the student advancement office at McDonough, and she told me it costs McDonough money every kid. They have to spend like $6,000 to get them through. So it's not, your tuition doesn't cover it. They need donations. One thing you said I want to go back to, and I want to grill you a little bit on it. You said it depends on how many buckets you hit. What do you mean when you say how many buckets?
Well, it's a term kind of an admissions office people use to, put together, social component, academic component, moral component, parental involvement component, legacy component. The more buckets a multiple sport kid, if you play football, basketball, if you play wrestling, all those things are buckets. And the more I think you can hit as a kid and as a family, the more marketable you are. Now, there's a few out there, and like in college football, they would be 5-star recruits. They need to hit one bucket. They're great football players, but if you're not that 5-star recruit, if you're not PJ Mustafer, who goes to McDonough and is a dominating football player, dominating wrestler, starting at Penn State, and you're not PJ Mustafers of the world, there's very few of those out there, then you need to hit a lot of buckets. You need to take great classes, you need to have great teacher recommendations, you need to have a social calendar that's impressive, so that when the admissions committee looks at you, the more buckets you hit, the more likely you're going to get those spots.
And it's funny because you see those kids, and as educators, you love the kid that's popular without being popular for the wrong reasons. He's engaged in classes. He's taking labs, and he's being a leader in the classroom because he naturally is going to excel on the athletic field or on the athletic court or whatever the situation is. So yeah, being able to get your foot into a lot of those buckets and being someone who academically can handle the workload. Some of these schools are unbelievably challenging, and it can be very hard, and you might not be in the right place.
It is. A lot of the private schools are really homework based. I mean, so, you got to look a kid in the eye, and I've often told kids, I said, do you want to do 2.5 hours of homework a night just to, do well here at McDonough? And, if the kid looks at you like, I don't know, then, you really have to encourage them. This might not be the right place for you, because in order to keep up here, you're going to really have to commit time academically. It's not just about playing football. It's a well-rounded person that we're going to try to, make you when we get you through McDonough or Gilman or whatever the private schools may be, because that academic piece is there. The amount of time that they have to spend off the field doing that homework has to be accounted for.
Great conversation on the financial aid piece and how you can maximize your ability to land at the school where you think you're going to do the best. And again, I say it all the time, to become the best possible version of yourself. Let's get to some preview games, some big games coming up this weekend. Not a huge slate of good games, but there's a couple, and you already alluded to. We have St. Francis IMG coming up on the horizon. Yep. Coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, well, Calvert Hall versus McDonough, another big A-conference game.
That's at McDonough on Friday.
Friday night. All the A-conference games are basically like the Big Ten games, so every one of those games is big. Is going to get a lot of focus. You're only getting the 5 games out of the A-conference schedule.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, musical
at the end of the regular season, the music stops, and one team is going to be left without a chair, and then the other 4 are going to the playoffs.
No doubt. So every week, it's a seeding deal. So every MIAA conference game, and McDonough's got a very good team. Calvert Hall's looking to rebound, so that'll be a good game at McDonough. City game, Mervo and Edmondson, both are undefeated. Mervo, Patrick Nixon, the coach at Mervo, still has them going. I think they have aspirations to win a state championship this year, so it's going to be fun to watch Mervo finish it out. Carroll County got Westminster playing Manchester Valley. Should be a lot of of interest in Carroll County about that game. Westminster's not 4-0 right now, but they're a couple losses in, but they're playing some good teams. But I think that's going to be a good football game out in Carroll County.
And we talked about that game's at Westminster, too. The Owls have the home field advantage there.
And they'll have a big crowd there. Westminster football is very popular, and a lot of people on Friday nights in Westminster go watch the Westminster team play.
Nothing wrong with that. Anybody else? Linganore, I think's up there.
Well, I really, Linganore's playing Walkersville, both undefeated, 5-0 Linganore, 4-0 Walkersville. So that again will be a big crowd. Friday night football is very popular at Linganore as well. In the B conference, Curly and Pilati. I haven't really mentioned a lot about Pilati. Curly really is an up and coming team. They've been kind of building it up, kind of like what Loyola's been doing in the A conference. Curly has been doing in the B conference this year, and they're going to play a very tough Pilati team. Pilati from down in Laurel, a bunch of skill guys who really are dynamic playmakers, and they're going to see if Curly can handle all that speed and skill from Pilati.
Pilati does have a great squad. Coach, thanks so much for the time. I want to thank my man Luke Jackson for running the knobs today. Well done, my man. Well done. We got to get you on camera. Are you on camera right now? Man's got some hair on him right now. Got so strong for a Monday too, dude. Rocking it on Monday. You got to start rocking that hairdo, Dommy.
I like that. Well, dippity do. I got to get a little dippity do.
I've seen you with that look.
I got dippity do.
It was later. It was later in the evening, as Paul Simon would say. It was late in the evening, and there was hoagie dancing to be done.
I will get the dippity do out for next week.
I tell you know what? You can save our viewers because you're on camera right now. I don't know if you want to go dippity. Action Jackson can pull it off. I don't know if Action Damico can pull that one off. I love you though. I love it. And good luck to Franklin Indians, my man.
Thank you, sir.
Who do you guys have?
Kenwood Blue Jays.
Are they? Is that
actually
your defense?
Kenwood's off to a good start this year, so they got some excitement in their program. They won some games. They got some good skill players. They have to come to Franklin, so but the Indians will be ready.
For me, I'm thinking that Calvert Hall McDonough game's going to be great. Edmonton Mervo, and then again, Westminster hosting Manchester Valley coming in. That'll be a hot one.
Good ball game.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I'm Booker Corrigan for Dom Damico. I'm reminding you, you only get one shot at today.